Welcome to the Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community, a space where justice meets action and community voices rise. Each episode, we bring you stories from the front lines, changemakers, disruptors, and everyday heroes who are building a more just, equitable, and liberated world. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to listen, learn, and move together. You were just listening to music from the incredibly talented Stephen Kong. You can find him on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today we have with us Dave Albrechta. Dave's journey into law began with a desire to fight injustice. But after a decade practicing in federal court, he began to notice uncomfortable patterns in the system itself. Incentives to escalate conflict, a fixation on money as a primary measure of justice, and a profession that rarely teaches lawyers anything about the psychology of conflict or how people actually heal after the legal battles are over. His decision to step away from traditional litigation opened the door to a deeper exploration of how professionals navigate conflict, burnout, and identity shifts in their careers. Today, Dave explores a provocative question. What if lawyers were trained not just as advocates, but as healers of human conflict? Well, hello. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today on this platform. I'm really excited to get to know you better and learn more about the work that you do. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like I was saying, I'm really excited to just get to know more of your journey and the work that you do. So just starting off, can you please explain what first inspired you to become a lawyer?
Yeah, that's always a good question. I actually just recently dug out my personal statement. So when you're applying to law schools, they require what's called a personal statement, which is this kind of, few page essay on why you want to go to law school and be a lawyer. And so it was interesting to go back and look at that. But I really, to sum it up, I just really wanted to help people and primarily help individuals. So after undergrad, I spent a few years in politics and worked for a governor and then worked for the state senate. And that's a way of helping people, but it felt a lot more broad. You're helping communities and you're thinking much more big picture. And I was finding in that work, which I enjoyed, but there was something missing. And I think what it was kind of that individual interaction. And I really, really loved working one-on-one with people and helping them problem solve and figure things out. I wrote a little bit about this, but there's a degree of it's a way to use my privilege to help people who are, don't have a voice, and which is the work I was doing as an employment lawyer. It was a lot of civil rights work and anti-discrimination type stuff. And so, it really, if you could sum it up, it was I truly wanted to help people, and I felt like I had the ability and platform and skills to do so. So.
Right, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to talk with you more about justice and what justice meant to you. So when you began practicing law, what did justice mean to you? And did you notice that this shifted or evolved for you over time?
Yeah, also a really great question. So I think that we all have, everyone has their own unique version of what justice means to them. But collectively, I think in the US anyway, that we have a certain conditioned sense of what justice means. And that there's, in this setting, when you're talking about helping individuals, a lot of times justice means holding someone accountable, being heard, kind of having your day in court, so to speak, that cliched phrase. Fairness and equity, that people be treated the same, no matter who they are, where they come from. And I think, I don't know what I thought when I came out of law school, but I imagine it was something similar to that. I don't think that to your question of did it change or shift over time, I don't know that my definition of justice changed, but my perception of how our society delivers justice very much changed, and kind of found that I don't think that our civil court system, I don't believe that it provides justice in the way that we all define it for ourselves. I think there's a massive disconnect there.
Right. I'd love to talk with you about this more. I know that you mentioned it earlier, but at what point did you start noticing that there are cracks in the traditional legal system?
There wasn't one defining moment. It
Okay.
was kind of a whole bunch of things over. I practiced for 10 years, um, running my own firm, and there were a few cases I can point to, but
Okay.
a lot of it was watching clients go through the process,
Hmm.
is what really started bothering me, and it was bothersome in that way that I just explained, which is that people come in to you with kind of these preconceived ideas about what's going to happen and how this is going to go. And frankly, a lot of that's derived from pop culture and movies and TV.
Right.
We've been trained to believe that you call a lawyer and you're in a couple of weeks you're in trial and you get your
Right.
moment, and there's this great aha moment where the other side gets, they get got
Uh-huh.
and 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 whatever. And so that doesn't happen. Spoiler alert, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Um, and watching people struggle with that, and trying to communicate that to people and explain it to them, and watching them go through the pain of the process, and then oftentimes the pain doesn't go away at the end. The
Right.
the justice system is not a healing one, as it's currently set up. And so people leave, maybe they win, uh,
Hmm.
and in our capitalist kind of definition of what that means, but they don't really feel satisfied.
Right.
So that was really troubling to me. And then there's just kind of an absurdity to the whole thing. We had one case that it was a dispute over a little over $2,000, and
Uh-huh.
that case went on for over 5 years, and
Um,
insane amounts of attorney's fees were paid by the other side, and we ended up winning. But I got done with that one. I'm just like, what are we doing here that we can't sit down and figure out how to resolve that, and move on, and instead of getting sucked into these battles. So those are a couple examples.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And how did you know that it was time to step away from traditional litigation? So I know that early on you must have like noticed those as you're just describing, but when did you finally realize that you really needed to step away from this though?
Yeah, the breaking point for me happened after I became a parent.
Okay.
And I have two sons, and when they were about 3 and 6, they
Uh-huh.
were beginning to interact a lot more, and there was a lot more conflict resolution happening at home.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I found myself going to this standard refrain where I was explaining to them the importance of apology. And
Okay.
I would often, there'd be some fight over something, and I'd ask them to apologize to each other. And at
Mhm.
least one of them, if not both of them, would say, "Well, I didn't do it. I didn't do anything wrong. I shouldn't have to apologize."
Mhm.
And so I was explaining to them that's not really what apologies are. It's not an admission of guilt. This is about you seeing the other person and acknowledging
Uh-huh.
your role in this fight, and being empathetic towards what they're experiencing, that whole spiel. And I was saying that kind of thing often. And then I was going to work and doing the complete opposite for adults,
Mhm.
where I was allowing adults to not talk to each other and not apologize and fight, fight, fight. And it's your way or the highway. And the complete opposite of how I want my kids to show up in the
Yeah.
world. So that created a real kind of existential crisis for me.
Okay.
Really seeing these values that are important to me about how my kids are being raised versus how I'm acting as a professional. Um, and then I also just kind of had a moment where I just saw that that's a longer story. But there was a single day where I just kind of realized I couldn't keep doing this anymore. And there was a lot of burnout and I was exhausted, and it's long hours and lots of pressure, deadline driven work where you've got, it's a high pressure job. And that was weighing on me a lot too. So
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I really love that. And I'm actually also a parent myself, and I think it's so wonderful what we can learn from our children. So, that's such a beautiful journey. And for me too, I feel like becoming a parent totally changed my trajectory for my career as well. So,
yeah,
that's really cool that you went through that as well.
yeah, they're the best teachers.
Right. I definitely agree. So, I know that there's a lot of people out there who might feel trapped in their careers that no longer align with their values. I've even caught that in myself as well. So, what was that transition like for you, though?
Mm. Yeah, it's ongoing. I made the decision to stop traditional practice in 2023, and that it took. I'm kind of a unique profession in that it took a year and a half to actually stop. So after I had made that decision, I had a whole pipeline of cases that I had to finish. I couldn't just walk away from it. And I didn't have people to pass it on to. I just had to finish the work. So I just basically stopped taking new cases and finished up the ones that were already started. So that took some time. That was a tough period of time because I at that point had decided I no longer wanted to do this, but I had to do it. That was extremely challenging and took a lot of patience and a whole bunch of things to get through. And then, from that point, it's been really liberating. It's been scary. Being a lawyer, I knew I was going to be a lawyer since I was a kid. It's what I always wanted to do. And so, moving away from that has been challenging. I've done a lot of therapy. I've done a lot of inner work. And that's all been really good and important. And I'm lucky to have a very supportive wife and family. So it just, you need a good, strong support network. You need the ability to look and do a lot of reflection. And I think I'm accepting that there isn't some magical place I'm going to get to where all of a sudden it's just all going to be like great and perfect.
Right.
This journey is one that I've got to be flexible and open to change and just kind of following what comes up and trying to stay present in each day instead of getting too caught up on where I'm going and all of that. So it's been a journey, and it's not over yet. I don't think it's going to be for a while,
Right.
which is a good thing. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And actually, as I'm getting older now, because I'm in my 40s now, and I remember when I was a lot younger, I used to think that, oh, by this time I'm going to have a set, career and everything. But I feel like where I'm at right now too, like I love what I'm doing with podcasting and stuff, but I feel like I'm constantly growing. And I think my younger self would have been shocked, like, what? You don't know what you're doing yet? But
Yeah.
I really feel that life. And I don't know if it's our generation or the economy or what it is, but I feel like there's a lot of people that I know in my life too are going through like a lot of transitions right now and really not sure what the future holds for them.
Yeah, I think that's probably all of those things are contributing factors. And I also think there's some biology involved that this is what our brains do when we're in our 40s.
Right.
That we start questioning what we're up to. And I think maybe previous generations didn't have the freedom or ability to step away like we do and for whatever reason. But yeah, I think I agree. And I know I've got a lot of friends and people in my life that are going through similar stuff. And so it's nice to be open to it and let's let it happen and not feel trapped,
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think you might have raised this question either in your bio or your intro to me, but you raised a powerful question. What if the way that we pursue justice creates more conflict than it resolves? So can you please explain what led you to that realization? I think that's really a powerful question.
Yeah, I can. I'll start by explaining just
Mm-hmm.
kind of some basics of how uh, the mechanics of litigation as it is right now
Mm-hmm.
um, is a really good example of this. So, for instance, I represented employees who lost their job or were struggling with harassment or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that it works traditionally, the way that we're trained in law school is that a client comes in, you analyze the facts, you compare it to the law, you decide if there's a good case. If
Uh-huh.
there's a good case, we sign them up, we now represent them, and we send what we refer to as a demand letter to the other side. And the demand letter is this very righteous, principled letter where it's the scary letter everyone worries about getting from the lawyer, right? It's, I've been
Right.
retained as counsel for so and so.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I understand the facts to be. We believe you broke the law in these ways, and here's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, First of all, that's a horrible way to approach conflict.
Uh-huh.
It's if you go take any basic class in mediation or conflict resolution or anything, that is not how you begin uh, conflict resolution. That is escalation. It's escalatory. It is blaming. It is pointing the finger. It's all kinds of things that you really shouldn't do if you want to try to resolve something.
Uh-huh.
So it's escalatory from the very beginning. And then the other side gets the letter, and typically they write one back in the same tone that says, not only did we not do anything wrong, but in fact, your client was the worst employee that we've ever had in the history of the
Mm-hmm.
company. And here's all the horrible things they did. There's a pretty standard letter we get in response to that. Also, very escalatory because now you give that to the client and they say, "What the hell? Like I gave my blood, sweat, and tears to that place, and I was loyal, and how dare they say that?" And
Mm-hmm.
now they get more entrenched in their position. And that's just the beginning. That's just the very first interaction.
Uh-huh.
And that goes on for 3 to 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
that back and forth. And literally, people just get deeper and deeper and deeper into their positions. And that's how our justice system works. And then one day you go to court and someone in some robes tells you who's right and who's wrong, and you're done unless it settles early. And so what happens is the way that our justice gets administered, and again, this is civil law, so criminal law is slightly different, but this is and be very clear, this is employment law, which is its own version of this. But either way, it entrenches people in positions. It encourages them not to speak to one another. I oftentimes talk about the legal system being this very expensive game of telephone. The game we played when we were kids where we
Mm-hmm.
whisper something around the circle. That's what happens when you've got a client talking to a lawyer who talks to a lawyer who talks to a client. That's how the communication works. It's a horrible way to communicate. And all kinds of stuff gets lost in that process. So anyways, I won't keep rambling. That's the point, is that the way that we approach this escalates conflict, doesn't ever let the pressure out. And so even if it gets resolved along the way, people leave still feeling this great deal of tension. And it doesn't really resolve the underlying issues.
Right. Thank you for explaining that. And with the next question, I'm curious about it myself, but love to hear your thoughts on that. So, why do you think that money has become the dominant measure of justice in many legal disputes?
Oh, this is a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I've done very limited research on the origins of this because I want to blame capitalism.
Uh-huh.
My urge is to say, well, it's just the structure that we've set up that is
Mm-hmm.
kind of, given to us from English common law and the English economic system and this Western society capitalist,
Uh-huh.
version of culture that we've adopted, and that's the primary thing. you can actually trace it back even further, and monetary compensation can be found as far back as kind of ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, even further. You can find where early versions of court systems were doing this kind of monetary exchange for wrongs that occur. So I don't know that it's necessarily capitalism, although maybe you could argue that those were early forms of capitalist societies too. So there's some parallels. But I think I'm not a historian. Something in that is somewhere in there is some truth about we believe that the best way to compensate people for something that went wrong is by giving them money. And what's interesting is that that's great and nice. People like getting checks. There's no doubt about that. But what people who win and get money for cases, I've noticed, they often can't put words to it, but there is a sense of something not being fully resolved. And that's because this goes back to what I talk to my kids about and apologies. This goes back to the idea that I think what humans are really looking for in conflict is acknowledgement. Pure and simple. They just want to be seen. They want their experience to be acknowledged, and they want the other side to offer some condolences or apologies for their role in it. And that ends up being a lot more powerful and what a lot of people are searching for instead of a check. And unfortunately, our system gives absolutely no space for that whatsoever.
Thank you for that. And actually, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what you think could be different if we had more of that human-centered approach. But how might our understanding of justice change if we centered restoration rather than winning?
Yeah, that's it, right? I mean, to me, that's the goal. If that were the focus, I think that so much would be different. I think our courts wouldn't be so backlogged. I think judges would have more time and space to really help people resolve things instead of just being kind of glorified clerks just processing cases. I think that lawyers would find their work more fulfilling. I think there'd be less burnout. I think it would be a whole different profession. I also, there's a belief, whether it's a myth or not, I don't know, that lawyers wouldn't be able to make as much money if that were the focus. And that's the threat to the broader system and a big part of why people don't want to make the change. But I don't necessarily think that's true. Might be a different conversation, but
actually, now that you bring it up, I am curious to hear your thoughts about this too, because I've worked in the nonprofit career for most of my professional career, if not all, and that's one thing that we always talk about. Doing people-centered work, doing community work, it's very selfless. You can expect a little paycheck, and I think it definitely has meaningful aspects, but I feel like so many people in my field have burned out. And I'm just wondering why, that is. It seems like when we give back to community, it feels like it has to come at a monetary cost for our financial. I don't know. As you're saying that about lawyers having that same thoughts, I'm wondering if there is some truth to that though, or I don't know. Maybe we could. What kind of changes do you think we need to make in the system in order to make that a reality though?
Oh man, there's so much there. It's a really
it's something that I
topic.
grapple with a lot too. I think for me too, it's just I am tempted a lot to go corporate just because money and everything. But it just I know my heart is really with the community, and I think we really need to find ways to incentivize people to do more of these kind of professions because it's real. We do need money to pay our bills and everything. It's not just to become rich or anything too.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, it's a big problem, and it's a problem. The problem I'm referring to is that there is a societal expectation that lawyers earn a lot of money.
Right.
This belief, and first of all, not always true.
Okay.
There's a lot of lawyers that are making huge amounts of money. And frankly, to earn a lot of money as a lawyer, it's not easy. You got to work a lot. And you got to put in a lot of time. And so one of the things I've always struggled with is I think there's a disconnect between how society views lawyers and how lawyers are actually operating. And that, a lot of them aren't super wealthy. There's a lot of sole practitioners that are just getting by. And when you compare, I was running my own firm. And when you compare the amount of hours you're working to how much you get paid, it's really not a huge paycheck. But you got to put in enormous amount of hours to get that paycheck. And so, yeah, they might make a lot of money, but are they doing 80, 90-hour weeks? And that's no way to live. You don't have a life. You're just literally working all the time. And you could do that in any profession. If you're getting paid hourly, you can make a lot of money if you work 80 hours a week. If there's work there to do, right? And if you're getting paid hourly, because I know the nonprofit world and you're salaried at a fixed, you might be working those kind of hours, but you're on a salary, and so it doesn't change what you get paid. Anyway, I think there's a disconnect. I think there's, I don't know. One of the other things that becoming a parent did for me is blew my mind about how childcare providers and teachers get paid so little, because that work is so much harder than the work I do as a lawyer.
Wow. Yeah.
And it just is. It's hard work. And the fact that there's something here about it's like a manifestation of our society's values. That for some reason we devalue these jobs that to me are the most important: raising our kids, community, human-centered work. I mean, those are the most important jobs. And for some reason we've placed a higher value on lawyers and doctors and these jobs that are certainly important, but I don't think they've deserved the type of monetary compensation that we've for some reason deemed that they should get. And I don't know what it is. I think there's, I could talk for a long time about the role of insurance companies, and there is a system there's an ecosystem that has emerged around lawyers, just like around doctors and pharmaceutical industry. There's these whole industries and ecosystems that have formed around the job that, I don't know, allow us or give us justification for charging the rates we do. But I don't have an answer to it. I'm as confused about it as it sounds like you are.
Yeah, thank you so much for your perspective, though. It's something that I think about all the time, though. Just like you were saying, it is important to, have people who work on technology on that. But yeah, because I'm also in the job market looking for jobs, and when I've seen some of these teacher pay rates, I'm like, what? That's all they get paid for, being responsible for our children. So I think there needs to be more equity in terms of I feel like, I don't know, just even as society, how we view people, and how I think monetary compensation as well for the work that people do. But thank you so much for your perspective. I really love listening to that. So what does it mean to you to think of lawyers as healers of human conflict?
Yeah, I think it means a lot. So it came from this quote from a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in the 70s, which shocked me when I first saw and read that this idea has been around for that long. And yeah, what it means when we think about being healers of human conflict, it expands the scope, right, of the mission, right? Like we're taught in law school that you focus on the individual in front of you, the client that's there. We're just focused on winning, and and that there's this implication that to help clients, we have to win the case. That's the only there's like the only factors involved is winning the case, and that's important. There's there's a lot to be said for that, but there are we need to zoom out a little bit and think about how we're doing that and what impact we're having as we do that. So as we're trying to do this job, I think it's our lawyers will always talk to you about the reason that lawyers are important is because we are not invested emotionally, financially in the outcome of the case. And so we can give you a clear perspective and help you see and give you advice from a position that isn't biased and all that stuff. And there's some truth to that. But we need to take that and be serious about it and say, okay, like if we see someone who doesn't want to fight, that doesn't want to go through this, or that fighting and going into this case would be detrimental to them, we need to give them other options. And that's the thing that we don't do a great job of. Right now, a lot of lawyers, it's just like, well, hey, you have a case, you either litigate it or you don't. And there are these whole other worlds that I've learned about and that a lot of lawyers don't know about in conflict resolution and ways to engage parties together to help them figure out solutions to their case that we just don't do. Lawyers just don't do that. And a lot of this is about letting go of control and acknowledging that that there are countless ways to resolve a dispute, and that the parties should be the ones who come up with that solution, not the lawyers. If for all the reasons I said we're good advocates and we're good representatives, those are all the reasons that we shouldn't be telling people how to sell the case, because we're not connected to it. It doesn't impact us. And so what happens is lawyers it's very black and white. You either have a case or you don't. If you have a case, here are the damages you can get, and here are the outcomes we can expect in court. And that governs everything. It governs all the advice we give. The second you step back and say, hey, how would you like to resolve this? What would a meaningful resolution be to you? Clients will give you things that seem impossible to a lawyer. That are not on the list of potential resolution because they don't line up with what the law says you should get. And so we ignore it, or we push it aside, or we say, well, we can't get that, but we can do these other things. Being a healer of human conflict is about going the other way and saying, all right, like if that's what you need to resolve this, how do we get there? And that might mean doing some non-traditional type things. But allowing two individuals to come to a resolution together that they've come up with on their own creates more lasting resolution. It actually helps them heal in the process. It helps them begin to rebuild relationship. It helps them learn how to engage in conflict in the future so that they know how to do this going forward. The benefits of it are just, they're amazing and very broad. Whereas the benefits of doing a damage calculation, you get X amount of money for this amount of time off work, blah, blah, blah. Here's your, it spits out an equation that spits out a number. No wonder people leave feeling like they didn't really get what they wanted, because it's not what they wanted.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I really love that. And, I'd love to talk with you more about your work with mediation and coaching as well. So through this work, what have you learned about human behavior and conflict?
Yeah, a lot of what I was just saying, so my journey into this was, 10 years as a litigator, and then I went and did some mediation trainings, and I spent a year doing that. I did 3 different trainings, and the one that was most transformative for me was through what's called the Center for Understanding and Conflict.
Okay.
and they focus on nothing but this understanding based model of mediation. And what that means is uh, letting go of control and creating a space and facilitating a discussion where the parties come up with their own solutions.
Okay.
And that's revolutionary as a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Because as lawyers, we are trained to believe that we have the answers, we give the advice, we tell people how they should do these things. They have control over their case, but we're the ones telling them what to do, essentially.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of work for me to let go of that and to understand that that the clients themselves have the answers. And that's a core tenet of coaching too,
Right.
of recognizing and just holding space for people to come up with their own solutions and helping them through that, but not directing them or telling them where to go. And so, what have I learned about human behavior? It's that everybody has their own answers already. They don't need, you don't need lawyers to tell you what to do. You don't need lawyers to analyze your case. You don't need a lawyer to tell you any of this stuff. The way that we can change, one of the ways that we can change the legal system is if the people that use it start recognizing that and learn that not every conflict needs to go through a lawyer. Some of them do. Lawyers serve very good purposes, especially when it comes to civil rights type work and protecting our individual liberties against government intrusion and all those things. But as far as individual conflict goes, lawyers really aren't the professionals who should be assisting with that.
Okay.
I hate to say it. We are at a point in the conflict where it goes no further and it needs to go to court. Then that person's there. But there's a whole group of professionals out there. Some of them may be lawyers who are trained in how to help people through conflict in a healthy way, and those are the people you should be going to first. Not lawyers.
Right. So actually, I did have a follow-up question just about conflict. So a little bit about me, like when I was younger, I used to be extremely conflict avoidant. I just didn't like that. And I think, but as I've grown older with more experience and, just dealing with different conflict, I realized that there's also opportunities. So with that, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that too. So how do you think that conflict can be opportunity for growth and not something that's just destructive?
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity for growth. We can learn so much about ourselves and about other people when we're in conflict. I mean, like conflict is like one of the most natural things about being human. You can't avoid it. It's everywhere. And when you have someone helping you who understands conflict at this level and can guide you through this process in this way, you will learn all kinds of stuff about yourself that you didn't know, and more importantly about the other person, which is really what this type of model is about. So when we talk about understanding, and I'll give an example to help contextualize it. And that example I gave before about how the legal system works, you go into positions. Your lawyer represents your position, the other side represents their position, and your positions just clash for four or 5 years. And you're just yelling at each other about your positions, and nobody budges, obviously. Understanding-based model of conflict resolution is about, the theory is you have to get people to a place of understanding first. Once you get to understanding, then you can start talking about positions, and you can start talking about how to resolve the positions and problem solving. But until you have a level of understanding, talking about your positions is going to be pointless, because you're just going to yell at each other about your positions. You did this, and you can't get anywhere. And understanding and getting to understanding, which is a journey and it's not easy, it's difficult work, is where the opportunity for growth is. Yeah, by just listening to the other side and saying, "Oh, okay, like I don't agree with you at all, but
Okay.
I now that we've had an hour-long conversation about this, I can
Mm,
understand why you feel that way. I can understand why you have that position."
yeah.
That creates compassion, it creates empathy, it brings out these positive attributes in us, and you'll learn all kinds of stuff about yourself in that journey, you know.
Right. I really love that. And, so something about this podcast, I approach it from a social justice lens as well. So, I think even though people might not see themselves as activists, I feel like sometimes activism gets just, people think
Yeah.
negative about that. But for me, activism means just empowering communities and, making things better, making it a better place to live for everyone. And so with that, I know that what we're talking about is a lot of can come to the individuals, about like conflict and even the work that you've done. But how do you think that healing centered approaches to justice ripple outward into communities and help to empower communities as a whole?
Yeah. Yeah. In huge ways.
Hmm.
Empowerment is really the key to all of this to me. That's a really central component here because
Hmm.
going through the legal system is not empowering.
Uh-huh.
Is my experience. Maybe it can be for some people in some situations, but
Hmm.
you lose a lot of agency,
Right.
in that process because you're turning it over to a court system and
Hmm.
you're turning over this decision to third parties to make decisions for you.
Uh-huh.
And so, when you have something that's happened that's bad and wrong and illegal and all the things,
Hmm.
um, if you are able to approach that in a way that's aligned with who you are and is an approach that feels good,
Hmm.
you might have to let go of the traditional sense of justice,
Okay.
in this
Right.
process. But in doing so, you might also find that, walking away from something, learning about yourself, reflecting about what happened, learning
Hmm.
lessons for growth and moving forward, that all of those things ripple out into your community and they are empowering.
Yeah.
Um, so you can take something that happens to you that is really terrible and turn it around and shift your focus to things that help you grow and expand as a person. Um, and I think the big, I don't know how to say this without sounding too cynical
Right. No, I
um,
know what you mean.
because some cases need to be litigated. I mean, there's
Hmm.
bad things happen. Corporations and people do terrible things to each other,
Yeah.
and sometimes people need to get sued. And so I'm not suggesting that shouldn't ever happen.
Hmm.
Um, I am suggesting that we need to just think about other ways through conflict, and that for some people, those other ways may be more empowering than what the legal system has to offer.
Right.
And to give a real quick example, I just recorded a podcast about this and
Mhm.
was talking about the connection between ecology and human communities, right?
Mm.
So we've
Right.
gained this knowledge in the last 100 years, which is ancient and indigenous wisdom that
Hmm.
white people in Western culture just have
Yeah.
ignored for a long time. So I'm not trying to claim it,
Okay.
but but since ecology has emerged within Western science
Mm.
in the 60s, 50s, and 60s, um, you know, we all now have a very clear understanding that these complex webs,
Yeah.
if you tinker with one thing, the whole system can collapse, right?
Right. Right.
And human community is the same way. Um, and that's what lawyers are doing. Lawyers get involved and will tinker with one thing, and the whole thing can fall apart,
Mm.
thinking outside of the case. And so when a lawyer comes in and deposes somebody for 8 hours and treats them terribly and makes them
Yeah.
relive this traumatic event over and over and over again and tells them they're wrong, and just it's a really traumatic, these things are really traumatic,
Yeah.
And lawyers tend to leave this kind of wake of trauma behind us as we
Right.
move through these cases. That trauma then bleeds out into those people's communities,
Yeah.
and in countless ways. And so if we change how we're doing things and can send ripples of compassion and empathy and peace
Yeah.
and all of that, it's I mean, lawyers are as much to blame for the current state of polarization
Mm.
and um, yeah, of polarization
Yeah.
as anybody, as any group of people are, and somehow we're able to skirt the blame, but I think we should be in the heart
Yeah.
of that conversation is in terms of how we have been behaving.
Right. Thank you for that. So what changes would you most like to see in the legal profession over the next decade or so?
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with someone, and the biggest, most important changes in legal education.
Okay.
And we need to be training new lawyers in this stuff. And by this
Okay.
stuff, I mean they need to have an understanding of just basic psychology of people in conflict and
Uh-huh.
understand how people approach these things
Uh-huh.
and learn about how to prevent conflict and de-escalate conflict. And
Uh-huh.
there's these very basic things that lawyers just and our legal education just completely ignores.
Yeah.
And as people who do nothing but deal in conflict, it is
Mhm.
insane that we get
Yeah.
zero training on conflict. It's
I
it's
that's okay.
crazy.
I didn't okay,
Yeah,
thank you. Okay, that's interesting.
crazy. We're
Yeah.
all that we're trained to do is issue spot, analyze facts, analyze law,
Oh,
and make good arguments. We know
okay.
we learn nothing about trauma
Oh,
or conflict or psychology, any of that stuff.
okay.
Um, and it's very easy stuff to teach even if there was a single class that everyone had to take,
Right.
just the basics. So I think that's the biggest change.
Okay.
If I could like rework the system and make it how I wanted to look right now,
Uh-huh.
um, I would propose a system that is more similar to uh, how they do it in the UK, which is kind of
Okay.
having two classes of lawyers.
Mhm.
So over there they have solicitors and barristers. Barristers go, I always get it confused. I think barristers are the one that go to court, and solicitors are the ones that work kind of behind the scenes. Either
Okay.
way, that's how their system works,
Right.
even if I'm getting that wrong. Um, and I think we could devise a similar system where you've got a group or a class of lawyers that
Mm.
do nothing but conflict resolution, conflict prevention, conflict de-escalation,
Yeah.
helping people try to resolve things in that way. And that's where people start. And that
Okay.
you cannot go to court unless you've done that first. You've got to hire one of those lawyers first and try to work it out. And if that
Yeah.
doesn't work, then you've got another class of lawyers that go litigate and
Mhm.
engage in the legal system in that way. Um, and so that's a very general kind of 30,000 foot view of it. But I think that a
Right.
system like that, where we integrate some earlier process
Uh-huh.
into the legal process would change a lot.
Right. Thank you for sharing that too. And I feel like I'm just so not aware of that world. But
Yeah,
it just like it makes sense though, because you're dealing with people and people are messy and, there's going to be
yeah,
conflict. And, I feel like there needs to be some sort of like, trauma informed or, psychology or something. But that's interesting to know though. And I hope that
yeah,
we can get to that point. And I think just like, hopefully getting to the point where people see people as people and not just as like cases or, just seeing the humans behind whatever cases that they're representing.
yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you. And just thank you so much for your time today. I really learned a lot from you. And just as we're closing out, I'd love for you to speak directly to the listeners. So at Voices That Propel Us, we believe that stories can move people toward action. So for listeners who want to pursue justice in ways that heal rather than divide, what is one step that they could start even today?
yeah. I think for a lot of people, it's just understanding that there are there is this new class of lawyers out there doing things
Okay.
differently.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's a small group of us, but we're out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if people look for there are two terms to look for to me. One is facilitative mediators. So
Okay.
that is a different type of mediator than a traditional mediator. And facilitative mediators are trained in this type of process where they will sit down with you on the other side in the same room and help you have these deeper conversations. And so I really encourage anyone who's in really any level of conflict
Uh-huh.
that should be your starting point, and do that as early as you, or even earlier than you think you should.
Okay.
If you feel a conflict building,
Mm.
do a facilitative mediation. Mediation, I think, it sounds formal. It sounds like this legal process. It's not. It really, it's just more of a facilitated conversation.
Okay,
Um,
wonderful.
People can start there. There's also kind of a new group of what we're calling integrative lawyers, or integrative law. And
Okay.
that's very much like integrative medicine, where it's trying to consider the whole person, not just them as a case of facts and law, but really exploring lawyers who are willing to think outside the box and say, hey, what else do you have going on in your life, and what are some other
Mm.
ways to go about this than just the old kind of slash and burn, litigation model? So I think the
Mm.
steps are, educate yourself about options that you have, look up those two options, and just, know that there are other ways than what you've
Huh.
been sold by the media and by culture, overall. You've got
Yeah.
options. So,
Right. Okay, but thank you again for your time. But just
yeah.
lastly, how can people find you if they'd like to connect with you or learn more about your work?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking.
Mhm.
My website's just davealbrechta.com. It's Albreechta.
Uh-huh.
And everything's there. So you can find my podcast there. You can sign up for a free coaching session, or look at what I'm doing as far as mediation and legal work too. So you can find it all
Yeah.
there.
Okay, thank you again. But I just wanted to
Yeah.
leave the space open for you to see if there's anything else that you want to bring up or talk about, anything else that didn't get a chance to be addressed earlier. I would love to leave the space open for you if you want to leave any last words or anything.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Yeah, man, we covered a lot.
Mhm.
Really great questions and a good conversation. I think I think the biggest thing is just that I have a lot of hope and optimism for where things are going.
Mhm.
I think we have to go through some difficult times when systems are changing, and I
Right.
think that's kind of where we're at right now. Um, that there are our systems are getting a little outdated, and they need to
Mhm.
be renovated and restored.
Uh-huh.
And I think we're living in that time period, and it's going to be
Yeah.
a little messy, but I think we're there. And so I just want I've especially these days just like leaving people with hope and
Yeah.
optimism.
I
And
love
and
that.
I just read this. Uh, we just went on a trip to the Pacific Northwest, and we all these stories of kind of ecological disaster, and
Mm.
you can find that anywhere these days. But one of them was sea otters. We were hoping to see sea otters, and
Okay.
we went to this spot where there were supposed there. It was called like Otter Rock or something. And the
Uh-huh.
first placard when we got out of the car said, the local sea otter population was completely wiped out by the fur trade in the
Oh
1800s, and
no.
there's no sea otters here anymore.
Oh.
Um, and so we came back and we got this book from the library about sea otters and about the reintroduction of sea otters and how important they are
Yeah.
to the shoreline ecology and all of that. Anyways, all of this is to say the last chapter in that book
Uh-huh.
said, we're living in the age of restoration, and
Right.
sea otters are coming back, and humans are doing all these great things to bring them back and understand their
Yeah.
importance and all this stuff. And I really liked that, because there's all these stories out there these days of
Mhm.
loss and destruction and
Yeah.
everything else. And I think we are living in an age of restoration, and we can get back on track and right all these wrongs and build
Yeah.
systems that are more human-centered and heart-centered and compassionate and peaceful and all those things. And I think that's happening. So I'll leave it with a positive note.
Thank you for saying that too. Actually, that was the reason why I wanted to start this podcast, because I can get cynical myself too, but I think sometimes people around me, they're like, no one cares. But I wanted to show people, like, bring as many people on this platform as possible to say, like, this is how many people care. And there's like so many people doing amazing work every day. And just hopefully I can put more hope out there too, because I know there's like a lot of polarization or people just not trusting each other anymore. But thank you so much for all that you do too, because I truly believe we also live in an ecosystem. Like, I work in community directly, but I only have so much like knowledge and skills. So, having people with different expertise giving their perspective as well. So hopefully we could all work together to build this better, more beautiful world that we all want to see.
You're here.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I truly had a wonderful time talking with you and wish you all the best moving forward. And I hope you have a good rest of your day.
I did too. You too. And thanks for all the work you're doing too. I really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, same here. Right. Okay, take care.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you for being here and tuning in to Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community. Your presence in this movement matters. If today's conversation moved you, share it, talk about it, and keep the work going. Together, we're not just imagining change, we're making it. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in the fight.
Every time I feel so mad and sad and bad, I say to myself,